Really, this is an effort to bring a lot of health into families. This is Mike Lynch.
Hello.
Sarah and I first went to Mike probably 7 or 8 years ago when we were having a lot of problems communicating. We were just stuck, like really stuck. And we probably saw you every other week for the better part of 4 years. And if you've ever been through a process of counseling or therapy, you realize it usually feels like it's getting worse before it's getting better. And you're halfway through and you're like, every time we go, it's just worse after. This is terrible. I have many, and my wife and I are very different people when it comes to like addressing conflict in relatively public places like restaurants. I was like, I may never eat Italian food again. But, by God's grace, we have really made it through a long way. And really what that boils down when you have kids is you see it in your children and you see the results in your children. And oftentimes you see the results years later in your kids, and you hope and you pray that, again, by God's grace, you paid attention enough and they got enough of the spillover of the positive things. And, we're happy to say like all of our children are here. And we want to just have our lives be kind of, live in a very open and transparent way, because there's a lot of other people that go through the same things. And, for us, it's, you see people who are going through similar challenges, and that makes it okay to talk about. And so that's all I'm going to say. And I'm going to flip to Mike, and we're going to see what, you won't find Mike on social media, by the way. It's live and in person or nothing with you.
You're right. That's true. So I just want to say, it was great to meet you and Sarah and then your family. And the issue of process of change.
There is some processing on your voice right now that's making you sound like a robot. You guys hearing that? Oh, and no one knows. Here, I'm going to give you, hold on. Check 1 2, check 1 2. Here, we're going to give you this one. I'll take that one.
Okay.
This is the robot voice one.
Better? Okay. So I was going to start, I just want to say it was really wonderful to meet you, and you wanted to change. And I would say the thing on your T-shirt, that little saying, is something that is wonderful to hear. It presents a vision, actually. A vision of people are going to be more important than cars. And it also suggests there's a priority. So it's nice to have a vision, but then to have it become a reality, you have to be intentional. You have to show up. Mm-hmm. And you have to be doing certain things that really lead to change. And you have to stay with it. And sometimes that's a spiritual director, it's a life coach, or it's a therapist that are helping you pick that vision, questioning your intentionality, trying to help you deal with the means by which to arrive at that. And generally, just with kids, you're having to mold or remold people. The reason why it's so terrible is it's like surgery. It's not a Band-Aid. And when you come to a situation like this where you see there's a vision, I have to probably rework who I am in order to live out that vision. I'm going to have to make some change, and there's going to be resistance in me to do that, as well as resistance with whoever I'm with. We're having to all work out certain things in ourselves. And so we're going to talk about self-differentiation, and we're going to talk about parenting styles. But I think the first thing I want to say is I wanted to say something about the furnace that you're in. And that is this first...
you know what? Right here.
Okay. Oh, we get one too. That's great. So it's looking at parental control, which at the age of 0 is you got it all. And then it's looking at individual control where there's none. There's that complete dependency at birth. And then what you see there is the deterioration of parental control and the increase in individual control. And actually, right around the age of 12 is where there's really a shift. You know it, it's been going towards this, but that individual, that child has got more control. That's also known as middle school, where all sorts of things happen, where they believe they have a great group of wise folks to lead their life. But why I'm saying that is between 0 and 12 with parents where you're trying to work with your children, that's also could be a long time before children, or it could be marriage and then children. But it's also, I'm trying to do a career, I'm trying to raise my finances, I'm trying to do all these things, usually at the same 12 years. And that's why it's this furnace. And I think you have to have this intentionality that my family, or you have to decide right now, is my family going to be ahead of my work? Because if I don't decide that relationships precede work, then that period of time is going to go right by. It is so busy, and we won't be able to do the relationship connections you want to do with your child. And you have to, of course, be connected with your spouse or your significant other and be clear about this intentionality that we want to put in the bonding or the attachment that goes on at the very beginning and runs for those beginning years. So it's not that after 12, like if I'm already past that as a person, it's not that you can't work on that. In fact, you can, but it's just like it's harder to do those same things later than if you did it now, because they get in the groove of connection.
I was surprised for like a split second, and then it all made sense when we were talking about this, like in preparation for this. And you were like, that's age 12.
Yeah.
Because I think oftentimes we think like, well, once you're out of my house, you're making your own decisions. But this isn't about making your own decisions.
No.
This is about your perception of your level of control, right?
Yeah, it could be your perception.
Like the 12-year-old's perception of their level of control. I don't know. I think Jaden, our little Jaden, might be the exception. I think his perception is currently that he has all the control.
Yes.
No, but age 12, does that feel right to those of you? How many? Let's get a feel for what age groups. How many people have a child 5 years or younger in here currently? All right. Do you also have a child that is between the ages of 5 and 12? All right, children between 12 and 18? And over 18. All right.
Who has all those categories? There's
Yeah.
all right.
You need to put both hands in the air and just put your head down. Get on your knees. Yeah, and so this, you were saying that your daughter made a comment to you because your daughter is, her children are like younger, right? No.
Between, yes, there are 4 under 8.
4 kids under 8.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
So.
And she was like, and this is a funny anecdote. He's like, this is the time when you don't have enough space. You don't have enough money. Right?
Right. Yes. Usually, you have a big home and your cars and you are all paid for and all that stuff.
Way down there
when they're all gone. And she was complaining. She was saying, I really need what you have now. But it's this furnace where you're trying to raise the kids and keep that as a priority in your life. And yet balance and continue with all the other things that you're having to do, and you're having to make choices about your time, your money, et cetera. And that's got to be something that you think out so that you do actually have a balance, but it's a balance in favor of priorities.
And so this we thought was a great framework to have as we go into the conversation.
Yeah.
Like, this is reality, regardless of what we think. And like I was saying, like you feel like, because I have like authoritative, and we'll get into this.
Yes.
Like, I decide when you come home, I decide that you have influence.
Yeah.
But I mean, we all know that influence isn't what we think it is. Influence is how the other person actually behaves based on, our advice or our best word. And so, like, as we go down, like I said the phrase, like, I feel like with Miles, and a lot of you know my 17-year-old, or our 17-year-old son, Miles, I feel like I'm migrating into the stage of trusted advisor. And it's a transition. And like, as a dad, I'm very like proud, excited for him to like step into manhood and start to make decisions. My wife, Sarah, is like, let's keep a couple more hooks in there. Like, easy dad, right? Like, don't shoo him off just yet. But the thought of like having to earn the spot of being an advisor that is listened to. And I know like there's kind of like this dip, like, when I went to college and I left home, my parents leading up to that, like, they knew less and less the closer I got. And then like about 2 or 3 years in, it was like, Dad, when did you get so smart? Right? You've really been working these last 2 years, haven't you, while I've been away? Right? So
yes, you're waiting for those words to come eventually.
Yes, yeah. So you want to move to the next one?
Well, I do, and I just want to say that at this beginning stage, that you're talking about, you've probably heard of the concept of attachment, and that is this bonding that goes on right as the baby is born, and it continues. And I just wanted to say a couple of things before we go to the parenting style. Is obviously attachment is what we really want to see for an individual, and there's several different types of attachment that are related to how the parent attaches to the child at the very beginning, but also how it continues. And it can be modified. In fact, I'm in the job of modifying an attachment later in life. But the issue is, it's very interesting. I love it because I have a grandchild that's just 1 year old. And what's so interesting is, obviously there's no language, but it's all the nonverbal language. So if what they've discovered with brain science is attunement starts probably right at 6 months. And the way the attunement starts is when you look at that baby's eyes, you usually send the message, I love you, I really am excited to be with you. And that would be, is joy. I delight to be with you is the way to define joy. So a baby is receiving nonverbal communication simply by eye attunement. That's why some of the people came in today, we were all looking each other in the eye and saying, hey, good morning, nice to be with you. Because this is all part of our training from early childhood right on through the rest of our life, is attunement to people. But we're training our child with attunement right away at about 6 months. And the issue is, what they've done with brain imaging now, they've discovered that brains work best on joy, worst on fear, which is no surprise in some ways. But now we have images showing that this is what the brain develops with. So one last part of the story. When you look at a baby at about 6 months and you look them in the eye and you're smiling away, they can handle that for about 5 seconds. And then they go, too much joy, and they look away. And then they come back, they will come back to you and do another 5 minutes, but it's actually building their brain. And so the whole part about that is we connect with people, we bring our energy to one another through our nonverbals and then also through our words. I'm saying all that because this is an example of people are watching and observing, sometimes not even cognitively understanding what they see, but they're non-verbally receiving things, and sometimes we actually say we're doing the same thing, you know? You know, what's that phrase? Don't do what I do what I say. Well, you know, we don't really want to do that very often, but they are really learning, connecting, and seeing the nonverbal first. So, should we go to the 4?
Sure.
Okay. Oh, well, this is a different thing, but that one. So the parental styles, you probably have heard about this. I'm using truth and love for a purpose, but truth is usually the things that we communicate about how we run the family. So what are our values? What are our beliefs that go with those values? What are our rules? What do we see as important in life? We're saying all that to our children, or we need to be.
I forgot to put something. High love is at the top, low love is at the bottom. High truth is to the far right, low truth is to the far left.
Great.
High and low.
So love, nurture, support, comfort, being able to attune to your child, support their emotions, and convey to them verbally and non-verbally that they're important. These are all skills that you're really doing. Over here, where it's high love and high truth, so that you have good structure that you've communicated and you live by, and good nurture, is what we call an authoritative family. Below that, what? You can say.
Explain authoritative.
So authoritative is a family. I'll read it to you, actually. So this style is characterized by high levels of warmth and responsiveness combined with clear expectations, reasonable levels of control. Authoritative parents are nurturing, set clear boundaries, and encourage independence while also providing guidance and support. So it's that blend. And that's why you're conveying in all those adjectives, you're conveying your family beliefs, your family rules. So the one below it, which is talking about less nurture and more rules, or more leaning on a style of diminishing nurture. It's called an authoritarian. And usually when you think about this, this is where a family style is, saying something on the order of, you're doing this because I told you so.
Because I said so.
Right. Yes, that's the authoritative, and it's more about compliance than it is about desiring to do because they feel nurtured and loved, supported. And then, of course, over there, permissive is a family style where there's a lot of nurturing, but not a lot of discussion of boundaries and truth. And that also creates, it's called permissive, but it also creates in there sometimes anxiety. And I think our culture has a lot of that right now, where we are overdoing the permissiveness and creating a high degree of anxiety, where people don't really have a structure. They're not being told these are the boundaries. Instead, kids are being given no boundaries. It's like if your child is heading towards the street and you've said, don't cross the street, they start to get anxious as they go to the street, but they're really waiting for you to say, come back, don't go do that. And today, it's sometimes parents are hovering and they won't tell the truth. They'll just say everything will be okay. The failed experiment.
Why do you think they aren't telling the truth? Does this tie into, some of the things we've talked about? And I feel like we're a little generationally like moving past this, on like this 8th place trophy mentality.
Yes. Right. That's right.
Where it's like everybody's doing great if you just build up and show without any build up love without any boundaries.
Yeah.
That it'll all be fine in the end.
Right.
And that creates anxiety, is what you're saying.
Right. That's the failed experience of not too long ago, where we said, oh, we'll jack up everybody's self-esteem by giving them all first place. And there's no structure, there's no understanding of how that is. And the self-esteem experiment totally failed. That is because of that anxiety of, I did as well as this person. Not really. I know that's not true. I know there's differences, but we're afraid to tell that. We're afraid to be a parent to say, here's the truth. If you don't go to school, you won't be as smart as you think.
Right. Right. Okay, so that's 3. I have a couple questions about some of the quadrants as well, but we still have to do the last.
So the last one is low on structure or truth and low on love and nurture. And so what we see there is abandonment rather than attachment. We see neglect and chaos because there's just nothing that the child is really getting to help support their development so that they get something. There's no one attuned to them. There's no one saying that you're important and let me support you. There's no one there saying you have a unique ability that we want to support as you go through life. So all that stuff that could happen is not happening, and therefore they don't attach. They are angry, anxious, avoidant.
Would the quadrant you're living in, and I'm assuming that no one in this room is parenting in the style of the bottom left, because if you were, you certainly wouldn't be here at 7 a.m. However, there are probably people who have had this experience being parented, and certainly there are folks who you work with or people who work for you who have had this experience. How does this play out into early 20s? Like, what does that usually look like? Individuals who have been parented in this bottom left.
Well, I mean,
it's a broad question. It can go a lot of ways.
Well, I mean, obviously, one of the things that unfortunately is those people are not in school. They are trying to discover what to do. Gangs develop as a replacement for family because no one's really been there. So if there's no parenting, they're searching for things like that.
All right, so let's ask a few questions about some of these quadrants, and maybe we can go around and look at this. So it seems like you want to live in the upper right quadrant.
Yes.
And as I look at this, I think of how I'm approaching my 2 daughters, 15 and 12. And, they're in that stage where it's like, boys exist now. They didn't a while ago. And we have neighbors. We live in a very rural area. And so all our neighbors are farmers. So the houses aren't right next to each other. But now the neighbor boys, so we have neighbors and we have a great relationship, but we don't spend a lot of time together. And now the neighbor boys are the same age as the girls. And all of a sudden, go-karts and 4-wheelers have come into the picture. And so now they're around and I've had these new feelings right, about the neighbor boys. And they come over, I'm like, there's going to be no swimming at the neighbor's house this year. Do you understand? Before we even get to swimming weather in upstate New York. But what I've realized is that it's already, when I look at the last slide of the idea of who's thinking about, I realize that what I've been doing to this point, and still what I'm going to continue to do, is try to make basically deposits in the account of, you're going to trust me that I love you when I give you some advice on how to think or why I'm saying no to something, why I'm saying yes to something. And I realize how important that is and how far the ship already is off the dock. And so I'm just putting all these pieces together, which is why living in this high love, high truth, being honest with your children, telling them why, letting, building up that sense of joy in them, as you put it, earns me credits. Just thinking of and I'm going to need to spend these credits when it matters. And I realize sometimes I might not have enough of them. And I know the older your children are, when you kind of come to this realization, the different you said you can still try once you get past 12, but it takes a different path and strategy. So we're past 12, right? We're into 15, and maybe, you know, for a lot of people in here, 17, 18, 19, 25, right? How do you do this when it's not at the kind of like early levels of like, I can just earn these credits by looking at you and smiling? What are some of those things?
Well, it's putting into place the very same things that you might say right now. So, for instance, in a practical way, if you want your child to be able to admit they've made a mistake, you start with you saying, I've made a mistake. And the mistake I've made is I've had these other things get in the way of spending more time with you. And you're trying to walk back in now to have a bonding experience in whatever areas you feel like you need to rebuild in.
So by taking responsibility for the gap.
Yes, that's right.
Right. And has anyone ever tried that with their kids? Some hands? It's funny, like I'm looking at Sarah's raising her hand. Yes, it just happened. Right? And there was like a thing between Sarah and our 12-year-old, and you started that way. You told me about it.
I definitely can tell that something was off. We all as parents, we can see our kids sometimes we just can't recognize. There's not necessarily an undertone. I didn't just yell at her, or I didn't get frustrated or anything. Nothing really happened, but there was this undercurrent of, I felt she was slightly detached a little bit. It was a perception that I had. And I knew, like, I'm self-aware and I'm thinking about how I've been or stress levels in my own life. Always I go to myself first and I say, how am I not applying these things? How am I not loving her? And so it was one of those situations where I realized I've been irritable, and I just needed to apologize to her. That's it. Like, and that was the gateway to she started to love me. Immediately, it was so genuine and so sincere. I'm so sorry, baby girl, that I have been overwhelmed and that has spilled over to you, and I'm sorry for that. And kids are so quick to forgive, and that is the gateway. Like, that was just my vulnerability, my honesty. I think as parents, sometimes we have this feeling like we've got to have it all together for them, and we have to have it figured out, and we can't ever submit essentially to them and show them that level of respect of even an apology for mistakes that we've made. And my kids have so much grace to know that, like, mom's growing just like you guys are. I make mistakes just like you guys do. And so, I mean, I remember doing that with my 15-year-old. Same thing. We got to that point where it was like, oh my goodness, she's at that crossroads, and I can either continue to just ignore this, or I can apologize because I'm imperfect and I make mistakes, and that's all they need. And that opened up the gate to, like, hey, we're back to square one. She respects me. I deposited those coins, and yeah.
So you did a lot of things in there, but one of the things that you said is, I do have to be self-aware, and we'll go to a slide about self-differentiation, which is about that. But if I'm self-aware and I've been practicing attunement, then I can say something's off. And if I'm practicing a style of in the family, we are able to say, we made a mistake, we're wrong, it's okay. And of course, that's leading by the parent. I mean, in a sense, the other side of the coin is, if we're filled with shame and we're not dealing with that, then we can't do a lot of these things. That, like saying, I made a mistake, or I can't do this. So it's really hard to turn around to your child and say, handle your shame. I want you to go and tell me when you make a mistake, but I've never done that myself to you. So it sets up a dichotomy where it's very hard to win. So later on in life, if you're going, oh, wow, I've got to think about what is really nurturing and how I did with nurture and how I did with telling my truth, that's the place where I start coming back to, well, I've said it's important to be authentic. I've said it's important to be nurturing. Now I'm going to change these behaviors. And by the way, please forgive me because I didn't really attend to this with you. Those are our taking the same skills that you'd want to do at the very beginning and saying, plug it in. So the vision is, I want to be authoritative. I'm going to intentionally think about how to go towards a more authoritative family style. I'm going to learn that, and I'm going to start doing the behaviors, the means by which to become more authoritative.
I think that the word authoritative
Yeah.
can become in conflict with people feeling like they're being, I don't know. I think it's confused with authoritarian because in the professional world, it doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
Please.
Because other people might have gone through this. So I have a 15-year-old and 18-year-old, and I had been working with a therapist for a while, and one of the things that had come out was that I tended to approach home challenges or opportunities the same way I approach being a CEO of a business. And so I would try to approach our family problems the same way I would solve business problems. My therapist worked with me for like a year trying to change my style when I would get home. But I had to one, be very self-aware. I had to share this with my family and be like, I recognize that I know I pull out my yellow pad and I start taking notes when you all tell me a problem. And so, but it had me first having to apologize and be self-aware with my kids and say, listen, I've learned that this is something I'm dealing with. And I'm working with a therapist on it. And so now the joke is in the family when we're having a conversation, I immediately go to problem solving. Like, Mom, take the CEO hat off. We just want to talk. And so, but it took me putting it out there and being like, okay, this is where I suck. I need you all to tell me when I need to be more nurturing. So that's been something we've been working on for a year.
And I just want to comment on the end of this. It became a family narrative. But it's a family narrative about bonding. And this is later in life. And it's just great because when you get together, there's laughter, there's nurture, there's this, we're connected. Yeah, always on the improvement scale. We never arrive.
I'm just going to stay down there. Yeah.
I don't think I actually need that. My voice goes I can't even whisper slow. I think women in general have a bigger problem at home than once they want to fix things. Because I cannot stop myself. Anyone wants to tell me they have a problem and they just want to talk, and I can't. I will fix it. I'll give you the result. This is what you have to do. This is how you get there. Even my husband says, I don't want you to fix this. Can I just tell you something? So I think men in general are not faced with that. I think kids look at dads to, hey dad, I have a problem, fix it. They just want mom to be nurturing. And I had to apologize that to my son. My son's 16, or our son's 16, and he's same personality as I am, so in one way it's good because I know what he's thinking, in another way we really clash a lot because we're both strong personalities. But what I've practiced is forgiveness to him as many times as I could possibly do. So then knowing that I'm not perfect, they're gonna have to forgive me many times. So he knows what forgiveness looks like. And there were times where I said, honey, I'm a sinner, that I'm raising a sinner in a sinful world. We're just all trying to make this better, so forgive me. And it's easy to forgive if you just show them forgiveness beforehand.
Mm.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
So that's, another example of practicing a value and practicing it from the framework that you obviously believe in, and therefore they see integrity, authenticity, and then they can trust you and be bonded to you because you're following what you proposed. You just don't have a vision, you actually had a means there, and you followed through, and that brings that connection. Right. And on top of it, well, actually, you can go and get 1,000 self-help books, but who's got time to read them? And then you got to put them into practice. So I feel like sometimes the issue is, I have someone or some small group that I can trust and go to share this. So, you're here talking to other workers to handle problems at the dealership or wherever. But really, that's the same thing it would be nice to have with parenting, right? I have 2 or 3 at least close friends that I can talk about parenting at a real level where I'm able to be authentic. And of course, I appreciate you're forever remembered, each of you, for saying this here. But if we have that kind of sharing going on, you make it safe. The 3 of you spoke up and talked about what really is going on in your life, and it makes for all of us feel safer because you were vulnerable and authentic, and we could feel like we want to connect with you. In fact, we're happy about what you said. And that's the same thing that can go on with your kids, but it's also nice to be able to do that with people to support us, because we need sometimes to have people listen, not fix, and sometimes we need a fix. And we're looking for some suggestions.
I think there's a force multiplier on this that can happen when we are busy and we do have to have the CEO hat on, and we do have to, there's just a lot of demands. It's a very fast moving industry. A lot of people are very motivated for a number of reasons. And I think what can happen sometimes is that we start to migrate over into that permissive. It's almost like, I feel like this is a watch out for me. Migrate over into permissive because there's a lot of love, and there can also be a lot of guilt or shame over not being there.
Okay.
Right? Like a lot of guilt or shame over the fact that maybe I have failed, and instead of going to the defaulting to, I haven't been here for you. Instead of being like, who wants ice cream? You know what I'm saying? Right? Who wants ice cream? Who wants a bike? Who wants a thing?
Yes.
Right? And
right.
so this is all, these pieces are coming together. But that's very damaging.
Yeah.
Actually.
Yeah.
Right?
Right. It does mean usually you have to look at yourself. I liked what you said in the sense that I could feel guilty or I could feel ashamed, and because of that, I just can't go into it, and therefore I substitute some other thing that looks like nurture.
Right. Like I'm going to make up for it.
Yeah.
But really making up for it to move toward the authoritative side is connection, joy, humility, honesty.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a shift for a lot, because it's easy. I guess it's easy, right? And we see this in a lot of situations where there might be divorce involved, or people start playing favorites off one another. It's very superficially, easily attained moments of happiness that maybe is like a counterfeit joy.
Yeah. So we're talking in a sense about what we want to pass on to our kids. So the other thing that comes to mind is what was passed on to us. So we might have grown up in chaos or in permissiveness or in authoritarian. And so then our issue is, okay, I have to change. I have to move through the family pattern I inherited to create the one I want to have. And that is wonderful if you choose to do that.
Well, I think a big part of that is understanding just like the map.
Yeah.
Right? Like you are here.
Right.
And so you have the you are here, how do I need more love, more truth, less this, more that.
Yeah. So that's...
you want to hit the last one?
Yes.
We got 10, 15.
Okay. So this is about self-differentiation is another way, I think, to say emotional intelligence, or how you work on developing who you are.
That's supposed to say or emotional intelligence, not of emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
Self-differentiation or emotional intelligence, like it's like a slash.
Right.
Right. Same way, different way to say the same thing.
Yeah. So if you had a balance between truth and love, like perfection is in the middle of that very continuum, and nobody's going to get there. But the idea is that if you go to the left, the further out left you go are individuals who let go of love or nurture and camp more on the truth. And bullies and bitches and bastards, they're all out there as you further you go out. And those are people with the insecurity, and they're trying to resolve that by being right all the time. And so if you recognize you tip towards that side, then you know I need to go back towards the love side. And that probably I'm more likely to have an authoritarian type of family because I'm overboard with giving out rules and directions and demands and things like that. Now, the people over here on this right side, the further you go out, these are old words, the more you look like a doormat, or you're really passive, or you're walked on. And sometimes the fun thing about, those people want to be liked, so they're not talking about the truth. And so you have to either walk towards the center from one of those two directions to get more of a balance, to become more of an authoritative parent. And you can diagnose yourself as which one that is. Or you can get married, and usually you marry the opposite. And they'll help you. They'll say, tell the truth, or would you lighten up and be nurturing? So, it's a strange thing where if you don't take it as adversarial because it's not you, but as help, it really works to bring the couple together.
Which is really hard if you're used to being right.
Or nice.
Or yes. Or nice.
I'm nice.
Or nice. Just be kind. Well, the truth is kind.
Yeah.
I've had to go. I know which way I've had to go.
Yeah. Yes.
We have like 5 or 10 minutes. I think it would be great if anyone wants to share or ask a question. I think this is the beginning of. We'll figure out how to keep the dialogue open. I think it's a very helpful dialogue, and there's not a lot of places to have it.
Yeah.
Does anyone have a question or a thought that you want to throw into the mix? Yeah? I'm going to walk around with the mic.
I just have just 2 comments. And one is, we didn't talk about social media, where we're looking at parents that, they're perfect, or there's people, giving us content and seeming perfect. And I just appreciate this forum to talk to people who in this industry I admire, and, other people, just to hear that, they're struggling too. So I love that the dialogue's been opened up. And I also want to make the comment that I have 2 kids. They could not be more polar opposite. I have a very strong-willed daughter, and I have a son who's very nurturing and has a lot of anxiety. And I run into, I have to parent different with each of them. But then I get you favor this person more. You spend more time with them, and it's like, okay, well, he has anxiety. He needs a little more help. But then, she's demanding of my attention. So you can't tell me how to do it, but just an acknowledgement of having 2 very different children, and some of the maybe language you can use. I love them both. I hopefully run somewhere in the middle. I've always been very truthful with my kids, very transparent in my emotions and things like that. So yeah, just any suggestions for that.
Well, you probably have already done this because you're attuned to the 2 of them, and you see if you talk about the one he's very nurturing, might be afraid to tell the truth a little bit, and conversely, the other one's more likely to be a truth teller, whether you like it or not. And you're having to work. And to me, the thing that you're doing is you're saying not all people are the same. And you've already said, look, you are very different. Do you notice you're different than your sibling? And as a result, they need to have a different treatment. And I'm going to explain what I'm doing with you and why. You know, you kind of are hard and you have your own way, and that really doesn't work for X, Y, and Z reasons later on in life. And over here, I'll explain what's happening with the other sibling. I will let it out because oftentimes a sibling can be the most helpful, just like your parenting. You know, your other parent can be helpful. Well, the other sibling, if you want to help your sibling, like the younger one or that's more nurturing and anxious, if you keep doing what you're doing, you can make it worse for your sibling, or you can make it better. You can hammer him, and then he'll be more likely vulnerable to bullying. Would you like your brother or sister to be bullied? Well, this is right here in the house. And so I'm saying this to you because you're strong in this particular way. But if you temper it, which is what we're wanting to do, I'm wanting you to do it, and here's with the person that is best suited for you to do this, and vice versa. You got to speak up and say when you're getting hurt by your sibling.
I love that everything you're recommending is really having conversations.
Yeah.
Real conversations with our kids. And I think our kids are way smarter than we think. She has a 2-year-old that's way smarter than me. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, I think that we look at our little children and don't realize they are already getting what's happening. You don't have to hide it. You don't have to. So to have these conversations, like you're saying, makes it just very transparent and makes it very, you know, that conversation's open then, I guess.
Yes.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. And I just want to say one more comment on you, and then I see the hand back there, is having those conversations are also helpful. One of the ways it shows up is we're having an open conflict as parents. And I think when we hide the conflict and we don't show that we're having conflict, they have an impression that there's no conflict in marriage, or the good marriages has no conflict. Not so. And then on the other hand, if you don't bring it up, you can't really say, no, we're not getting a divorce. We're just having a fight. And for some kids, that's the other thing that they're afraid of. They're going to school and they're seeing separation of relationships. But if you're talking about it, we really want to have conflict resolution. And boy, isn't that a huge issue.
Can I add something to that, to what you were saying? Just really quick, because I know he has a question, really, really quick. But a lot of times, too, with the older kids, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but empowering, because of the kids being all so different, as they're older, and even as they're starting to become like 12, that self-aware, like that, they're starting to kind of take the reins a little bit more. I know with my kids, I do say a lot to them, I need your help with this. You have certain strengths that this child doesn't, that your sibling doesn't. So empowering them to really encourage one another and kind of directing that orchestra, I guess, that craziness is the best way that I've found that kind of gets them out of their own self-centered rut. Because what about me? What about me? I mean, human nature to its core, right? All about who we are and what we're not getting. And it's just in our kids, and we're constantly as parents battling that selfishness in their hearts, but pulling them out of that and saying, I need your help in a vulnerable way. They're struggling with this, and it's not in any way, shape, or form to throw them under the bus, but yes, use their strengths. Can you help with that? What would you say to that, Mike?
I'd say it's great because you're aiming at saying to that child, you have a purpose. You have a meaningful existence that you can have, and that's something that you're trying to develop all the way through. And I'm going to come back to social media, but you're...
Well, first of all, I grabbed the microphone because have you noticed that all of the comments have come from the women? So
Congratulations.
You got to speak for the other side. I'm looking at this question of parenting probably from the other side of most of the people in the room, in that I'm 62 years old. I have 2 grandchildren, and I have 7 children. The oldest is 33, and the youngest is 22 and about to graduate college. So I'm reflecting on a career of raising kids. And this is just a comment because I haven't heard it, but the best piece of parenting advice I ever got was when I was 18 and a freshman in college. And the president of our university, Father Ted Hesberg, came to my dorm to have kind of a Q&A, with the freshman men of Alumni Hall. And he just made the offhand comment that I've never forgotten and tried to live by. And it was this: the best thing you can do for your kids is to love their mother. And that has been a focus of mine for 35 years. 35 years Monday. And that, being right is overrated, but giving your kids the security of a loving marriage was probably the very best thing that Melissa and I could do for them, for what that's worth.
Thank you.
Great. And I would say real love is a mixture of truth and love. It's not, I know you use the word love there, but it's a complicated word. And to me, you're absolutely right, because working on doing love, truth and love, is demonstrating, modeling how I want to treat a man or I want to treat a woman. It's setting up. You are that image showing them what does it mean to respect and love this other person. And they're getting it. And so congratulations on the 35. And I think that's a great piece of info.
All right, I think we have time for your comment on social media that you wanted to talk about.
Yeah, it's sort of like, duh, it's common sense, but Norway just came out with a study where 2 districts canceled having the ability to have cell phones at school. So this set up, after 10 years, a great study of cause and effect, because they could compare those school districts that allowed cell phones and those that didn't. The number one thing they found was those people who had been with cell phones are more highly anxious. That was the first thing. The second thing was they had less relationship skills and more vulnerable to being bullied, because they're not doing FaceTime. How ironic. They call it FaceTime. But the truth of the matter is, from way back as a baby, being able to look somebody in the eyes, get the cue that you're attuned to me or you're not. You're dismissing me. All that is gone right in the middle when it's so critical. They're stepping out of the home and where they've been practicing real FaceTime into the other FaceTime. And as a result, they're losing relational input and skills. And so we find them more anxious, more vulnerable, and the women are the most vulnerable, and they didn't do as well in school. Duh.
Well, Mike, I want to thank you for taking the trip. You weathered your first Southwest flight ever to get here. What seat did you pick?
I got given the front, so that was miraculous since I didn't enter at first.
Yeah, and so thank you for investing in us this way. It means a lot. Thank you for being here. I hope that this conversation continues, and I'll think about
timing.
I make some content. So I think maybe we'll turn this into a way for us to connect, whether that's on Zoom calls or some kind of podcast. We're going to have more events. You got lots of free time.
Yeah. So, I just want to say thanks to you for participating and speaking up, because it just brought up the quality of who you are as people, and it's great to hear.
All right. Thank you very much. Thanks, Mike.